Hello my friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink and more Halloween cards and really fun, easy techniques. So, I of course wanted to use Simon Says Stamp new Layered Bats Slimline Stencils. So the first thing I wanted to do was die cut a couple of circles from some masking paper. So I'm just using one of Simon's nested circle wafer dies, and I'll run that through my die cut machine, die cut my circles, and then I am applying them to some Distress White HEAVYSTOCK. Ignore that the panel on the right is wider than the other one. I grabbed the wrong piece and didn't realize it till later. I was like, why is this so large? And yeah, so I trim it down later, but it doesn't matter really. I just trim them down to technically slimline size, which is 3.5 by 8.5 inches. So I've applied my masks. My idea was like a spooky sky and then kind of almost turned into like a galaxy background. And to do that, I'm going to use a whole bunch of sprays. So I have my splat box. I have some just bamboo paper towel in the splat box. It doesn't have to be a splat box. You can use a regular cardboard box. It doesn't matter. Paper towel is just to keep, you know, big pools of ink. I've had a few people asking, do I keep the paper towel? Do I, to die cut, etc.? No. It's also why I use bamboo paper towels. But even after I'm done my videos, like I use these until they are completely destroyed. But again, personal preference. Sometimes they do like the colors and everything. So if that's what you want to do, great. So anywho, all the sprays I used, I will link, but with both backgrounds, I used Distress Spray Stains in Picked Raspberry, Prize Ribbon, Crushed Olive, Seedless Preserves, Scattered Straw, and then I added Black Soot Oxide Spray, and then I'm using some of the mica spray stains that were released as part of the Halloween Distress release. So I used like Bubbling Cauldron and Hocus Pocus and Flickering Candle. And it's gonna look like a hot mess. I was again in like a dark, moody sort of mood. But plus also though going for night sky, but adding the color to it all. So I did all my spraying, just spraying fairly heavily. And then just drying it with my Ranger heat tool. I also was picking up excess with the same thing, a folded paper towel that I just keep on my desk and same until it gets completely saturated. And then I added a few more sprays just to kind of fill in layers, add more color. And the thing is, and I'll show at the very end of the video, the mica spray stains, the sparkle they add to this background, just chef's kiss. It's fabulous. So this technique, I've shown this in videos. I already did one, I think. Yeah, I did one for sure this year, one or two. And then I did a video a couple years ago. This was inspired by Stacey Hutchison, who does a lot of makes for Tim Holtz brands. And I'll link to my original video. And in that video, there's a link to my blog post, a link to her original blog post. Because, yeah, this spooky moon technique is so fun. And that's all you do. You just peel off the mask after you've dried everything. And then you spray it with water. And because Distress sprays and Oxide sprays and the mica spray stains are water reactive, they immediately start to pull, and move and do their thing. So they pull into that blank area with the moon and you get that amazing. It just, I love it. So, I splattered with water, picked up some of the excess, dried it, did my thing. Love, like the color. But I'm going to add to this. So the background's pretty much done. But I want to add some white splatter. So I'm just using some white gouache in my palette. Added some water to reactivate it. Splatter this on. It won't stay super white, which is totally fine with me. So I splattered that. And then I also used the Flickering Candle mica spray stain. Just mix that up, like shook it up really, really well. And I put that onto my little palette. And I'll swirl my brush in that and splatter that as well. And love. I really don't want these to be limited edition. I want these mica spray stains to last forever. Like be part of the permanent distress line because they're legit fabulous. And this one for like gold, basic like gold splatter is, it's so pretty. Seriously, please Ranger, please keep them forever. I'm going to have to get extras because I love them. So splattered that on the background and then set that aside to dry. And then I'm doing the exact same thing, like using the exact same colors, you know, same technique. But because they're sprays and they just have minds of their own, it's not going to look exactly the same, you know, and that's what I love about it. And this one too, this one right now, like with it wet on camera, this one looks like a hot mess. But again, it's kind of like when I do like actual galaxy backgrounds that I've shown in the past, you know, when I'm using watercolor, etc., and creating these galaxy backgrounds, they do look like a hot mess. You know, they're dark and they look almost kind of gross. But then you have the splatter, etc., and you finish it off. It's like, oh, you know? So same thing with this one. You know, splattered, dried it, splattered, dried it. Once I was happy with it, peel off that mask and then spray the water so that things start to move and you get that spooky moon look, which is just, seriously, I could do this all day, every day. So did the exact same thing, you know, sprayed with water, splattered, dry, etc. And then I'll splatter on that white gouache and then the flickering candle mica spray stain. So once I've got everything just inked up, splattered, all the things, I do my little tiny bit of routine maintenance. This is what you want to do with any sort of mica sprays, distress oxide sprays, etc. Anything with like pigments or sparkles or anything in a spray bottle. Wipe off the nozzles, always, after use. You don't want that drying because that can also, that's one of the ways it can clog. Shaking them up properly before you use them also helps prevent clogging, especially with these mica spray stains, because you know all that pigment and shimmer settles to the bottom. So you always want to shake them up really, really well and make sure there's nothing settled in the bottom before you use them. That's a good way to prevent clogging as well. So I did all that, cleaned everything up, set all that aside, and then I pulled out some of my texture paste, put that onto my palette. I'm going to tint this black with some black soot distress paint. That was something I've never used to think of, using my paints to tint my texture paste. And then just Tim mentioned it in one of his live videos and was saying if you want to tint your texture paste, to use the paints. That's just a better way to do it. It's a better product, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, huh, never really thought of that, but makes sense because distress paints don't have a bunch of fillers in them. So you're going to get more true colors, and they also aren't going to like leach. If you've ever had that happen when you're tinting texture paste with water reactive products. So yeah, and also because black can be a hard one to achieve because, you know, white texture paste, fillers, those sorts of things, you'll usually end up with gray. But with this, I got it black. You can also put this into a separate container if you want. Seal it up real good, you know, keep reusing it. I only mix up pretty much as I need, but yeah, with black would be one I would actually have a separate container of it, because why not? Because it just, especially at Halloween. So yeah, mix it all up, and I'm only using one of the bat stencils because it's actually a set of two, but I just chose this one to use, and I'm just holding it down and then just applying that texture paste over the stencil with a palette knife, and yeah, love it. Like, you lift off the stencil and it's like, yep, day made. So, not just because of texture paste, but also because distress paint is permanent, I immediately washed off my palette knife, stencil. Either stick them in a container of water if you're not going to a sink right away, or take them to your sink and clean them off, because distress paint is permanent and you don't want to ruin, you know, your stencils, etc. So, set those aside to dry. My sentiment is this spooky wafer die from CZ Design. This was actually part of last year's Stamptember release and another one of my favorites. And I couldn't make up my mind between black glitter cardstock or this pink, but pink won because the black glitter cardstock actually really faded into this background because I had so much going on with just the shimmer. So the pink stands out a bit more. So that's Simon's magenta glitter cardstock. And then for the companion part of the sentiment, I'm using the reverse spooky salutations. And I just trimmed off the salutations and then the spooky word, since I'm using the die cut, I put back in the package to use for something else. So I cut those out. And then I just decided to use some black soot distress ink to edge all of these, or both of these panels, just to remove that little bit of the white heavy stock that was still kind of showing through. And then I'll do a little bit of just very light sort of blending around the edges of this. I decided not to go ham with it because the background's already quite dark, you know, so I did a little bit. It's subtle, just subtle, because there was no need to really darken it up. So I did that with both of these backgrounds. And of course, by this point, the embossing paste is dry. It doesn't really take that long to dry, at least in my climate anyway, because yeah. So did all that blending just using one of my little blending brushes all along, or just edging, and then that little bit of blending along the corners and the edges with the Black Soot Distress paint, or Distress ink. And then my card bases are Simon's Smoke cardstock, and these are 3.5 by 8.5 slimline cards. So I've got the stencil on the inside of the card, and I'm lightly blending the Black Soot Distress ink over this. I'm not going heavy because I don't want them to be like solid black, since on the inside you'd be writing something. So, and if they were solid black, it would just make it more difficult. So I just did like kind of a lighter hand with the blending. And then I also pulled out my envelopes, which are slate envelopes. And these I went a little heavier with because it's such a dark gray, and really blended the Black Soot ink over the stencil. So I've got the bats on the envelopes as well, and just love. So did that to the envelopes as well. And then I pulled out my oldie but goodie favorite, the hand-lettered Halloween stamp set. This came out 3 years ago, something like that. I've used this in so many of my videos. It's one of my favorites. So I pulled that out and I stamped the Happy Halloween sentiment onto some smoke cardstock with picked raspberry Distress Oxide ink. And then I'm going to die cut that with the coordinating wafer die. I could have stamped the sentiment directly onto the inside of the card, but by being able to stamp and die cut it, just made sure that it was legible over top of those black stenciled bats. So it was just easier. So once I adhered those, I'm going to adhere the card fronts to the card bases just using craft tacky glue. And these will completely cover the entire card base. And because these panels are a little bit warped, not a whole lot, but and also large panels, I just stuck them underneath my MISTI while to let the glue dry, so it, you know, adheres down all the way. That's one way to flatten out, you know, if you've got you do backgrounds with the stains, inks, water, you know, all the things, and they're getting really warped. I've shown in other videos, like running it through your Mink machine, just different ways to flatten them out. But the oldest school method is just putting them under something heavy, you know. This is where a stack of books does come in handy. So anywho, got those adhered. And then I took my black marker just to edge along this sentiment strip because they are a white card base and I didn't want that showing up. So I just edged it with the black marker. And then I'm going to adhere these spooky die cut sentiments with the craft tacky glue, just putting it on an angle because these are wider than the actual card base. So once I got those adhered into place, I'm going to pop the Salutations into place with just some thin 3D foam squares to also give it a little bit of dimension. And then as is tradition, you could be done here. There's a lot going on. We got shimmer and texture and bats and glitter and all the fun things, but I'm going to add more bling. I've got my go-to Studio Katia iridescent stars. They're sold out at the moment. They will restock them because trust me, I went to order more and you guys bought them. So thanks. I need to get more packs of these because especially at Halloween, but I use them all year round. I love the iridescent stars embellishments. They're one of my favorites. So I added those as well as these blossom crystals. And these are actually, they're like pink with like a shimmer glitter in them. I love Studio Katia's shimmer crystals. There's a few that I've used so many times, you know, and the glitter is like inside the little crystals. They're just fascinating. So anywho, I adhered those throughout both of these cards because again, when you're working on slimline cards that are this large, there's more room for embellishments. You know, it just is. There's more room for activities. So adhere those into place with dabs of craft tacky glue. And then once I've got all of these embellishments in place, these cards are complete. I'm going to try and show the sparkle as I always do with my flashlight on my phone. it's one of those things too where you need to see it in real life. I feel like it's like you do need to own the Distress mica spray stains, because they're the sparkle is so pretty, and like the splotchy parts too of the different colors and how they show through, and I love it. It's so much fun. I love what they add to backgrounds, and you guys know I've been obsessed with the sprays and playing with them and all the things, and this just adds another layer of interest, because you can never have too much sparkle. So yeah, sparkle, and then that solid black texture paste with the bats. Just yes, I love the stencil. I have more ideas for backgrounds using it. Love it. So much fun. So as always, I will post a link below the video to my blog post. I'll have links to my Halloween series, etc. at the end of this video, so you can check those out if you've missed any of them. All the info will be in the description box below. Thank you guys so much for watching, for subscribing, thumbs upping, commenting, all of it. I very much appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye!